Hey, everybody, and welcome once again to Nose in the Book, a Bible reading commentary with me, your host, Pastor Justin Van Reed. Great to have you with me once again today as we take a look at four more chapters from God's Word, four more sections. And again, if there's anything in any of these passages that you have a question about, please feel free to always post any comments in the comment section below, and I will check those and do my best to answer any questions that you have. All right, we have before us today from the book of Leviticus, still here in Leviticus, we're in chapter 23. And then in the book of Psalms, we just have one psalm today, which is going to be Psalm 30. In Ecclesiastes, we're up to chapter 6. And then in the New Testament, in Paul's letter, second letter to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 2. So let's jump right in here. Leviticus 23, we have a list here of all of the various feast days and festivals that Israel is to celebrate and keep throughout the year. So you have the Sabbath, of course, and then you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, First Fruits, Harvest, Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, Feast of Shelters or Booths. And so the instructions have previously given at some point before this, regarding these various festivals, but we've never seen them like this before, all in one spot. And the instructions given when to keep it, you'll see in each case here, when the various day is to be celebrated, and then what they must do. So, for example, Feast of Unleavened Bread, for 7 days you must present special gifts to the Lord. On the seventh day, the people must again stop all their ordinary work to observe an official day for holy assembly. All right, don't eat during the that time. The bread you eat must be made without yeast. Right, so all the instructions are here how to celebrate. Going on, same kind of thing, whether it's the Harvest Festival, Festival of Trumpets, right? Here's the following instructions on the first day of the appointed month and early autumn. So again, the day is told, and it's an official day for Holy Assembly with loud blasts of a trumpet. And don't do any work and present your gifts. Day of Atonement, which we read about in Leviticus 16. And so here you have also be careful to celebrate the Day of Atonement, 10th day of the same month, 9 days after the Festival of Trumpets. So very specific calendar. And let me just point out here, since we've got all these festivals here in one chapter, it was important for Israel for their, to observe this calendar, this holy calendar, because in each case there was something that they were learning or being reminded of, whether it's a past event of something that God did in his faithfulness and his power, some way he delivered Israel and worked for Israel, or it's in the fact that God is the provider. And so, it's something like a harvest festival where, we're going to, look to the Lord and remember who it is who has given this to us, or first fruits, same kind of thing. Who is it that's providing for us? And so throughout these festivals, there was a constant reminder, even the Sabbath, right? By keeping the Sabbath each week, they were reminded that they need the Lord. It's not about the work of my hands, it's about the provision of the Lord. And so these rhythms of the calendar were very healthy for Israel and very healthy for us as well. Right? We come together regularly. We have, for example, church, let's say on Sundays. And so each week we're called back again to remind ourselves to remember who the Lord is and remember about our walk with him so we don't get too far, we don't stray. Or communion. Let's say we have communion once a month. Every time we do it, as often as you eat or drink, what are we supposed to be doing? Remember the Lord's death, proclaim it until he comes, right? And so, again, all these various festivals, right? When we have Christmas, when we have Easter, we remember the Lord's birth, we remember the Lord's sacrificial death. And so these things are good for us, right? There's nothing wrong with, a calendar that's full of various reminders of what God has done and who he is and how he is the provider for us. All right, so that's Leviticus 23. Then we move to Psalm 30 here, and we have, again, a Psalm of David, and he's going to start with praise, right? The Lord rescued me, so he praises the Lord. I will exalt you, for you rescued me, verse 1. You refuse to let my enemies triumph over me. And we've been reading David here in these early Psalms. You know that he's very excited about that. We have this important line here about how God's anger lasts for a moment, but his favor for a lifetime, right? How good it is, Lord. He says, sing to the Lord, all you godly ones, praise his holy name, right? Because, the Lord is so merciful and gracious, right? His anger lasts only for a moment, but he blesses and blesses and blesses, right? How much we deserve so much, judgment, but instead we have experienced so much blessing. And that is just the God that we have, such a merciful God that we have, right? Weeping comes through the night, but joy comes with the morning. How about the fact that he goes on here, talks about, I called to the Lord and he answered, right? That's really why David's so excited. I cried out to you, O Lord. I begged the Lord for mercy. And, I cried out, hear me, Lord. And he says, you have turned my mourning into joyful dancing. And so David is praising God because God has answered his prayer. All right, next up we have from Ecclesiastes. We're up to chapter 6. And it's a pretty relatively short chapter here, but he talks about how some have wealth but then lose life. And what is the point of this? Is this is meaningless, a sickening tragedy. He says, God gives some people great wealth and honor and everything they could ever want. Then he doesn't give them the chance to enjoy these things. It's a true observation, right? God might bless somebody with a abundance of material things, and then they die young. And so he goes on here, talks about a man might have 100 children, live to be very old, but he finds no satisfaction in life, doesn't even get a decent burial. And so, there's just this sadness, this meaninglessness of life apart from God. Life just lived under the sun, as he's used that phrase, right? He says he might live 1,000 years twice over, but still not find contentment. And then he dies like everyone else. And so, so many are like this. They're unhappy. They don't know joy, and they go through their lives, and it doesn't matter what their life is like, whether they have much or they have little, whether they live a long time, right? They don't have joy. And so again, he comes back here again to this: enjoy what you have. Verse 9, so important. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless, like chasing wind. Enjoy what you have, enjoy what God gives you, and be content with that. And so, just another summary statement. He's done this several times now, showing the futility of some of these things, but then the how does it have meaning? Where does it find meaning? In enjoying it as a gift from the Lord, enjoying it as coming from the hand of God. So that's what we have for Ecclesiastes chapter 6. All right, lastly here we have 2 Timothy chapter 2, and this includes a hymn as well. So first of all, he talks about enduring suffering for Christ. Again, it's kind of the theme of this letter, right? He says, you've heard me teach these things, now teach these to others, right? So Timothy, pass these things on, and we'll pass what on? Enduring suffering. So from verse 3 on here, he gives several pictures, little illustrations. First of all, as a good soldier, right? So a soldier is his first example. He says he's focused, and he's going to endure difficulty. It's what soldiers do. They're disciplined, and so that's how you ought to be. And so he says they don't get tied up in the affairs of civilian life, right? So they're disciplined. They're focused on the task that they're commanded to do. And in the same way, we should be with the Lord. And then athletes, he says, cannot win the prize unless they follow the rules. So athletes have to be, he says, be like an obedient athlete, follow the rules. How about hardworking farmers? He says they're the ones who are the first to enjoy the fruit of their labor. And so he says, all right, so, think about these things. These are metaphors that he's using, illustrations that he's using. So he says, Timothy, I want you to think about these things. And he says, ultimately, remember Jesus. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Focus on Jesus. And he gives him this little hymn here, to probably an ancient original hymn in the early church, that was about what Christ has done. If we die with him, we will also live with him. If we endure hardship, we will reign with him. If we deny him, he will deny us. If we are unfaithful, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. He cannot deny who he is. Again, Timothy, remind everyone about these things. So Paul said, I pass these things on to you. I want you to pass them on as well. And then, verse 15, so important. Work hard so you can present yourself to God and receive his approval. Be a good worker, one who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly explains the word of truth. So this goes back again to this, soldier mentality here, right? Be a good worker. Be focused. Be disciplined here. Right? This requires work, right? One who correctly explains the word of truth. You're going to require the work to put in to learn it so that you can teach it, so you can understand it yourself, so you can share it with others. And then, meanwhile, there's this foolish, unhelpful topics. And, so often we can get off track, and, we get into talking about these things, just foolish arguments, that are unhelpful. They're not going anywhere, and they get our eyes off of what is right and good and true, and the mission that's before us. A lot of times it causes lots of division within the church, and so it's just very unhelpful. So he says, avoid that, stay away from that, and instead, then he talks about things to run from, sin. Sexual sin, again, in particular, right? Run from anything that stimulates youthful lust. Instead, pursue righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. Enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with pure hearts. So have a pure heart. Hang out with those that have pure hearts. Stay away from sin. Flee from it. Again, he comes back to the foolish, ignorant arguments. And he says, let's not get into quarrelsome things here, but be kind to everyone, be able to teach, be patient with difficult people. He's giving him all these instructions. Again, remember, because he wants him to then pass them on. So he wants Timothy to be a certain person, but he also wants then Timothy to raise up others that will be like that as well. All right, that's all we have time for today. Again, we had Leviticus 23, Psalm 30, Ecclesiastes 6, and 2 Timothy chapter 2. So glad you could be with me during these few minutes. Hope that we'll see you again soon. Until then, keep your eyes on the Lord. Keep your nose in the book. Thanks.